Hi, everyone. I was doing my morning Bible reading, and I encountered something that I really wanted to share with everybody. So here goes. It's live. Um, I hope it's working. I hope the audio is working. But here goes. So I've been spending the past several months slowly going through the Gospel of Mark. I've been even doing a sermon series on it that I've called the Remarkable Gospel. And I called it that, besides the fact that I love puns, call it that because there's so much there that it's clear to me that it was written to evoke response. And so I'm finally getting to the end. I'm in Mark chapter 16, the last chapter of the gospel. And the scene is it's after Shabbat, the Sabbath. We don't know if that I won't get into that about some of the technicalities exactly when it was, but it was after they had rested. Yeshua had been tragically executed, put in the tomb, and we see a scene where these women are taking spices to anoint the body, and it seems that some of this should have been done earlier, but it all happened so quickly before Shabbat had started. And now they're on their way. And I remember at some point, some time ago, thinking that it was a little strange that they would do this after burial. But the whole tomb system of first century Israel is very different from what many of us are used to. This really struck me when we went, I was on my first tour that I led to Israel in 2015, and our guide took us to an excavated a rich man's tomb, which was similar to the kind of tomb that Yeshua was put in. And actually, it was a multi-grave tomb with various compartments for the different family members. And the Pharisee, Joseph of Arimathea, had gotten the body from the Roman governor and placed Yeshua's body in his own tomb, which was one of the prophecies that was that stated in Isaiah chapter 53 that though he was with the wicked in his death, crucified with robbers, treated as a common criminal, he was put in a rich man's tomb, prophesied 600 years before. I know I suffer from tangentitis. I'm going to try not to get too distracted. So let's stick to the point. So it would have been common to go in and out of the tomb. The women likely didn't know that the Romans had put a guard there, but they also didn't know that by that time the guards were gone. All they were concerned about was who was going to move the large, heavy stone for us. And so they go, and what it says here in verse 4 of Mark 16, it says, "And looking up, they saw the stone had been rolled back. It was very large." There's a lot of this interesting detail that we get in Mark that we don't get in the other gospel narratives. And so when we read this quickly and looking up, it sounds like one of those kind of biblical comments, and behold, they saw the stone had been rolled back. But the Greek word here is anablepo, and it means to look up. But interestingly, it's the word often used when Yeshua heals people's sight. And while it could simply mean that it could mean that they simply noticed, possible. It could mean that they tilted their head to a more upright position and saw. But there seems to be a clue here that it was a revelatory experience. Now, not revelatory in the sense of seeing a vision or that they saw an angel, which we read about in other parts of the story. But here, this act of noticing seems to be miraculous in some sense, that their eyes were open and they saw it. And of course, anybody passing by looking at the tomb would have seen that the stone was rolled back. But this seems to be indicating to us that this experience was an experience whereby they moved from their despondency and discouragement, doubt and fear, to seeing the way things really were. It's going from despondency to encouragement, from, in a sense, from blindness to sight. They saw what they would never have believed could have been possible. Now, one of the interesting things in the telling of the Gospels is how the followers of Yeshua, Jesus, could not comprehend what he meant by him being killed and risen from the dead. Only few Jewish people of the first century believed in a bodily resurrection. No one believed that the Messiah would die and rise and be the first, or the first fruits of a future resurrection. Is one of the evidences that this was not made up, that this was a surprise experience that they ended up recording and telling everybody. But it was a very Jewish concept, uniquely Jewish concept that some Jewish people had, that anyone would rise from the dead. But when Yeshua would talk about it, it was so beyond their comprehension, it would just go right over their heads. And so in this scene, they're in a place of understandable grief. They want to show honor and respect and care for the dead body of their beloved teacher, rabbi, and master. And then, surprise, surprise, their eyes are suddenly open to the truth that death had been conquered. They don't fully understand this yet. There's so much more for them to realize. But this was the beginning of this major shift of understanding of life for them that would completely transform their lives and eventually change the world, and has been a blessing. And this story has been such an impactful, life-changing blessing to so many. Well, I know what it's like to be in that place. And of course, with the COVID-19 coronavirus that has affected the entire world, our thoughts have been like, there's a lot of noise, right? And discouragement, and people fear losing their jobs, and the economy is collapsing, and some people are really sick. We just got word of somebody that several steps removed from our family has the illness. We were going to have a gathering here the other night, and I decided to be on the safe side, close down narrow the circle of people that would be here. And it turns out that one of the people that therefore couldn't come is a sibling of somebody who has it. And we're going to be hearing more of this. But up to now, this is the closest it's gotten to us. It's affecting us in other ways, where many of you know that our daughter Sarah and her husband and their baby are due to come from Haiti this evening via Montreal. And there was all this, we didn't know if the flight was going to happen. Of course, we won't know until they actually take off from there later on this afternoon. But as far as we can tell, the flight is coming, but they're going to have to go into 14-day isolation. And some of us family members won't be able to see them for a while. And that is very, very sad. And that's just one example of how people are being affected, and we're all being affected. And we hear about it constantly, and people are panicking, and they shouldn't be panicking. And some of this is people's own personalities, and some of us are more prone to anxiety and worry, and others of us probably should worry a little bit more than we do. And get real, folks. Don't forget to wash your hands. But I was finding myself getting snowed under by the whole thing. It's not about so much the fear of the illness. I don't think it's just, there's so much talk and so many details, and then the particular things that we're dealing with in our lives, like our daughter and family coming. It's a lot to be concerned about. And I have a tendency for my mind to spin. Normally, I'm way on the analytical side, and that does push me towards worry when I shouldn't worry, and all the rest. And so anyway, when I was reading this and it hit me, and looking up, it reminded me of a time many years ago. We were living in Vancouver, and I was snowed under by some concern. And I was taking a walk in the afternoon. I was trying to pray. And I remember I was literally walking with my head down. And I think that's what we do anyway, that's often what we do when we're feeling overwhelmed by things. Our body posture begins to kind of like turn in ourselves. We stare towards the ground. And that's what I was doing. I'm walking, I'm trying to pray, and my head's down. And then whatever the reason was, I lifted up my eyes, and across the street where I was walking, there was this huge real estate sign. Now, some of you are going to think this is a little crazy, but oh well. And we're live. There's this big sign, and it's a real estate sign. Now, it was in front of a house. And as you know, the real estate signs in front of houses are generally a certain size. This was the size of one of those commercial ones. They're huge sign, not quite a billboard, but big, bigger than this. And the real estate agent's name, blazoned in big letters on the sign, was Wendy Faith. Wendy Faith. Now, people can try to figure out how this stuff works. The fact is, God used that to remind me, not only, and interesting how I had lifted up my eyes, and then I was reminded to look up to God for help. And I recently wrote on this and about, are we really praying? And I think it was one of my Torah Bites messages. I think that's where it was. And I was sharing some of what I've done where I think I'm praying, but I'm actually muttering away. I'm not actually praying. I'm thinking, I'm muttering. It sounds like kind of like I'm praying. I'm saying God, and in my muttering, but then I'll stop and go, wait a second. And then I'll raise up my eyes and I'll actually pray. And the difference that makes, and I haven't recorded all of my answers to prayer, but the amazing small and large things that have been resolved in response to actually looking up and praying. Many years ago, I learned what I think is the biblical truth. That we need to be praying out loud. It's that there's no reference in all of the Bible of praying with eyes closed. And there's just something about looking up. I keep hitting my microphone stand. I hope you're not hearing that. I'm sorry. There's something about looking up and realizing that God's not in a little box, but he's the great creator and overseer of the universe. And that while we live in a realm of the unknown and the uncontrollable and often the dangerous, that he's bigger than all this. And especially reading about this, where these women are encountering the beginnings of understanding that the Son of God defeated death. And this is what we need to remember at this time. And we have to be careful while being wise in how we conduct our lives at this time. We need to be wise, but we need to trust him who heals, him who has promised to be with us. Look to him who creates out of nothing and can provide and does provide out of nothing. He has all the universe's resources and more at his disposal. And there's no telling what he might do if we look up and put our trust in him. There's things we'll have to deal with. Actually, there's too many things to deal with. And one of the ways that God has helped me in a very practical way when I've actually stopped muttering and started praying is as I offer him the long lists of the things that I think I need to do, he's helped me prioritize. Leave these things alone, focus on those things, do this one now, leave that till tomorrow. He's promised to give wisdom, and he does. But it all starts by looking up. So I hope you found this a little helpful. And please share your comments with me, and see you sometime.